Okay, so on to part two. I just went and put down Amir just to sleep in his little bouncy seat for a little bit. I just needed a little break. I think he was getting kind of warm on my chest, and I wanted to make sure that, he was getting his proper air and everything was fine with the Moby. Again, I'm still kind of new, and I'm not sure if I'm doing everything right with the Moby, so I'm just kind of trying it out for a little bit at a time. Anyway, this is part two for the labor and delivery story of the birth of my son, Amir. So, yeah, I think I left off where I said my friend Amanda and my dad showed up kind of around the same time as I was about to get the epidural, and as much as I love my father, I really didn't want my father there because I knew that he wanted to just be there for the birth, and he wasn't really interested in obviously being there for the labor. But I was, exposed, my butt's exposed, I'm, totally out there, and I'm gushing amniotic fluid, and, they're about to come in and get my epidural, and I know they only want, one other person in the room. So I had him and my friend, who I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't expecting her to, be there. She was like, I can be in the room or out of the room. She's like, I just want to be here for you. And, it was really nice that, she really, did want to be involved. I appreciate that. But at that point, I just didn't even want anybody, let alone being there. I didn't even want people looking at me. I didn't want people talking to me during contractions, nothing. And I can't remember if I mentioned this in my video before, but I was just kind of like snapping through these contractions and rolling my legs and kind of just everywhere, all over the place, and whatever I could do to curb the pain of my contractions. So I sent my dad and my friend walking around for a while I was getting the epidural, which took a while for the anesthesiologist to come up there and get it. I was really nervous to get the epidural. I was super scared about whether it was going to hurt or what kind of possibilities of risk factors. I knew the risk factors, but it's like scary, when you're like, okay, you gotta sit perfectly still. Nurse had me, hugging a pillow, and I'm sitting there, waiting to get my epidural, and, I could see my husband's face. I'm like, no, go over there, because I don't want you to freak me out, and then I'll feel like I want to move. Sorry, I'm just checking things out. I'm gonna move him over here a little bit more. So I just was like, I don't want to freak out, and I can't move. So he moved out of the way, and the anesthesiologist was explaining, things he was doing step by step, and I felt definitely a bit of a bee sting when he put the needle in, but after that I didn't feel any pain. I did feel some pressure where he was inserting kind of the tube, and that was a really odd feeling. Sorry, move me here. That was a really odd feeling for me. But it wasn't painful. And then right away, probably like 10 minutes after that, I started feeling completely numb, like from like my thighs to that, my belly button or a little bit over. And I could still feel my feet. I could still move my feet. They did put they did put between my legs this peanut pillow, they call it, and it looks exactly like a yellow peanut, and it helps to it elevates your legs so that the baby can move down. But it was quite uncomfortable to have that there, because it was like you have to like steady it, like you really have to balance like this huge ball between your legs. It's gigantic. But I think I was just in a lot of relief, though, feeling a lot of relief because of the epidural. It started working. So at that point, like, my dad decided he's going to go home. Obviously, Amir wasn't ready to be born quite yet, and it was probably going to be a while since I was dilating so slowly. I think I said my contractions were about 2 to 3 minutes apart when I started to get the epidural. Unfortunately, after I got the epidural, things did start to slow down. I went from like 2 to 3 minutes to about 5 to 7 minutes again. So that was really discouraging, and they decided they wanted to put me on Pitocin, and I was like, no, this is the pattern that I was trying to avoid. Epidural, or usually it's like an induction with Pitocin, epidural, and then a C-section. I'm like, I don't want a C-section, I don't want to do this, and I was mad at myself for getting the epidural. I'm like, oh, I can't believe I did this, and I slowed down my labor, and why did I why did I think this is worth it, to get the epidural? I was really upset with myself. But I did ultimately get the Pitocin. The Pitocin. I did get that, and it did start speeding things up again, and I was still at a low dose. I can't remember what it was, but it was one of the lowest doses of Pitocin. But like I said, it did speed things up. Again, and my epidural started wearing off. At this point, my other friend had arrived, my friend Doris, and again, I wasn't sure if I still, was wanting visitors at that point, but they ended up being really, really helpful. My husband was just very helpful in the way that, he would just get me whatever I wanted, whatever I needed, ice, he'd rub my head, but my friends were, they're, massaging my feet and, helping me breathe through the contractions and, putting on some soft music and just kind of, talking very softly to me through them. And when I wanted it, and sometimes I didn't want anybody talking to me because it was so painful, it's just no, leave me alone. Don't say anything. Don't look at me. Don't, just look away. Yeah, sometimes. And then other times where it was really helpful when they kind of were massaging and rolling, helping me roll through the contractions. And I say roll, I mean I'm coping through them. I just feel like the word roll helps convey what I was trying to do. So the anesthesiologist did come back up and they gave me a bump or a bolus, and that was supposed to help, but it didn't. It didn't help at all. Every time I would press it, it was supposed to give me a boost, and it did not at all. And I was telling them, and they're like, well, just press it again. I'm like, no, it's not working. You don't understand. I felt like people didn't believe me that the epidural had worn off. I'm like, it's not working anymore. So I think I was at between a 6 and an 8. I can't remember what point this was. I think this was at a 6, and they started. I don't think I talked about this. I'm sorry. So I had to re-record the second part again. So every time I would go, I would open up to another centimeter, we wrote on there soon, and so my husband would erase one, and then there would be, I would see how many are left. So I think I was at a 6 at that point, and they're like, well, we can bump you up to a 12, and I was like, I don't know if I really want to go through that. I don't know if I really want to get another shot of, not another shot, but I don't know if I want to go up another level because my contractions already slowed down from the first one. And the nurse is like, well, you might want to consider it. You still kind of got a while to go, and you don't want to wear out all of your energy on going through contractions when you still have a lot of pushing to do. So ultimately, I ended up doing that. But after I got the epidural bumped up to a 12, I started shaking uncontrollably. And I'm sure it wasn't shaking as bad as I felt, but inside it felt just very shaky, and I hated that feeling, and I was so scared. And the nurse explained that that was normal because I was going through the transition period of my labor, and that's perfectly normal that your body does that. But it also, epidurals can cause that as well. But it's not to be, anything to be concerned about. But I hated that feeling. I hated it. I almost, I regretted that I got it up to a 12, even though I did get some pain relief at that point. But because I hated that feeling, it was so scary. In the midst of that, the nurse kept checking, my temperature, and they're checking your blood pressure and all of that stuff, and my temperature went up, and I developed a fever. I developed a fever 100.4, I'm sorry. And then they checked me again, it was 100.5. At this point, the epidural had worn off yet again. My body doesn't take the epidural. It will for a short period of time, but then it'll wear right off. So at that point, we're like, okay, we're done. We're just going to have to accept that I'm not going to have an epidural through this birth and delivery, and, I need to just cope with these contractions and not count on that. again, just intense contractions. I'm just doing whatever I can to like keep myself calm, to not cry, to not get super tense and upset, because I know that that's going to make the contractions like a million times worse, even though I just was so upset that the epidural wasn't going to work through my delivery, and that I was shaking, and that I was developing a fever. And they kept looking at the monitor, and I knew something was going on. I knew something didn't seem right. And I was like, oh my God, okay, I have a fever. I'm going to get a C-section. They're going to come in here now, and they're going to tell me I need a C-section, because that happened to my friend. She needed to get a C-section because her temperature went up, way up, and developed a fever, and they ended up doing that. Like, I know they're going to come in here, and it's my fault. It's just all my fault, because I wanted this stupid epidural, and then I had to get put on Pitocin, and now I'm going to have to do a C-section. I was so angry with myself, and at the same time, like, everybody's like, just calm down, it'll be fine, you'll accept whatever you need to do, and as long as you and baby are fine. And my friend who's a nurse was there, and she was really very helpful, and just like, she could honestly be a doula. She was just like so amazingly helpful and relaxing, as much as you can be during labor. And I saw her looking at the monitor too, and I could tell by her face, because she's been a friend for a long time, that something wasn't quite right. And I guess his heart rate had gone up. It was in the 160s, and then sometimes it was in the 180s, and that was really high. They were really concerned about my fever, and they were thinking that, I may have gotten an infection because my amniotic sac ruptured such a while ago, and it took so long to progress. And the nurse ended up taking blood. You can see, like, because I was moving around, I couldn't sit still, like, my arms all bruised up, to check my blood count. And so in the meantime, she's like, you might not even make it, because she checked me. I think I was at an 8 at that point, or yeah, I was at an 8, and she's like, you might not even make it to, find out if, whatever your blood count is. You might have this baby before then. And they're like, we definitely are not trying to freak you out, but we definitely are, concerned with getting the baby out very soon. His heart rate's picking up, and I forget what they call it, but basically they were worried about an infection developing in my amniosac, and it affecting me and baby. So they, started the Pitocin again, to get things rolling. Finally, I'm freaking out here. I'm like, I can't believe, like, this is all going on. I'm probably gonna have to have a C-section, and everybody's like, calm down, stop focusing on that. You're gonna get the baby out one way or another. He's gonna come, and you guys are gonna be fine. So she comes in the room, and I'm like, can you please check me? I feel like the urge to push. I did, and it felt like this giant turd, this giant poop, like pushing pressure on your bowels, on your vagina. Like, it's just like intense pressure. I don't even have the right vocabulary for the kind of feeling it is, to be perfectly honest. And she checked me, and she's like, oh yeah, she's like, if you feel the urge to push, you go ahead and, you push through that. Or I'm sorry, this is right before she checked me. And then she checked me, and she realizes at this point that I'm a 10, and she's like, oh, she didn't expect me to, like, get to a 10 and be ready to push in that kind of short amount of time. The doctor wasn't quite there in the building yet, and she's like, well, if you gotta push, you gotta push. She gets a mirror for me, because I requested a mirror, and it was definitely an experience having that mirror there. I saw the whole shebang down there, and the pressure from my bowels was pushing out hemorrhoids, and it was huge and gigantic, and really not a pretty picture. That wasn't, at least, and I kind of wanted them to angle the mirror so I could just see, the baby coming. But, you can't really, I could see still everything, and I was just like, oh my God, like, it was just like nothing I'd ever seen myself before. Anyways, I started pushing, and like almost immediately, like, the head started crowning. And the nurse was like, wait, slow down, the doctor is not quite in the building yet, you gotta wait. And I was like, no, I'm sorry, I can't wait for him, he needs to get in here, and I gotta push him out, I gotta get him out, because, that pressure when they're just, like, kind of waiting at the entrance to be pushed out, like, you can't deny that pressure, you need to get that baby out. You can't just wait for a doctor to come in there. So I'm still kind of pushing, like, even though she told me to wait, I can't help it. He gets in there, and he's seriously in there for like 2 minutes. I meet him. He says, hello, nice to meet you, congratulations, and I push him out. And let me tell you, that pain, it's like a big explosion. Like, it reminds me of like what I would imagine like a big bang. Like, it was an explosion of pain, and I can't describe the pain to you. It was like the burning ring of fire. It was like the most horrific pain I've ever experienced in my life. Please excuse my phone, but I need to get this done before he wakes up. It was intense, and he was here, and it was 25 minutes of pushing. And they couldn't believe how fast he came. Finally, he came so fast. So it was just like an amazing experience. And they held him up, and I saw him, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe he's here. And I couldn't believe my eyes that this is my baby. It just felt, the whole experience was so surreal. And looking back on it is like, I can see how you forget about your childbirth, because it's such like not forget, but like, details start slipping away, because it's such a big experience, and I think you can't remember that significant amount of pain. So, by the time I pushed him out, there was definitely no pain medication at all helping me there. I did tear, so thankfully, even though my baby did have to go to the NICU, they let me have some skin-to-skin time. They put him on my chest. I got to try to breastfeed him. It was so wonderful, and it was kind of a distraction from the stitching, because the doctor started stitching me because he knew I was an epidural, but I could feel it. I was like, no, I can feel that. Ow, So he had to give me the shot, and they stitched me up. I ended up getting a 2nd-degree tear. Sorry, I'm really trying fast to, like, wrap this up, but it was just such a special moment. They put the baby on my chest. He didn't cry. He just stared at me. He was staring at me, and it was just, like, I don't know, it was so amazing to have him there, and I couldn't believe that he was mine, and he was real, and, that I don't have the words. I'm not good with words, but it was just, God, it was such a wonderful experience, and I'm so lucky. But they, they probably gave me about 10 or 15 minutes with that skin-to-skin time, I think. Again, time has just kind of blown out the window. Basically, by the time they were done stitching me up, they told me that they had to take him, because they were going to take him to the NICU, they weren't sure if he had an infection, and that, I guess, it's standard procedure when they think that the placenta, the amniotic sac was possibly infected. So he was going to be in the NICU for 48 hours on antibiotics, and they didn't have time, obviously, to wait for blood tests to see if he had anything. So they had to take him away right away after that to the NICU. My husband went with him, and my friends were there, just kind of like, wow, you did it, 25 minutes, and they were so supportive and encouraging, and there's something about that. It was like a sisterhood thing, and I really felt, even though at first I kind of wasn't sure I wanted them there, I was really glad in the end that they were there, and they were so supportive, and they were just, I don't know, I think it's just like a weird sisterhood thing, like a womanhood thing that they could understand, even though neither of them went through childbirth. Like, they knew how to comfort me, and I was really happy to have them there. So that is kind of basically it. My birth story. He was in the NICU for 48 hours. I was able to breastfeed him right away. He latched on, and we were very lucky that we had that bond. So we were in the hospital for 3 days, and so we were released on Sunday, and he finally got to join me in our room for our last night on Saturday night. They gave him the go-ahead, okay, everything was perfectly healthy, and it was just a false alarm, and he's wonderful. And we've been nursing, and everything's just been really better than I could expect. I did have kind of a little freak out when we went home, but I'll talk about that in another video. This is getting very long, but that is the story of my beautiful baby, and I'm so sorry. This is totally out of order and just kind of like crazy wacky, but that's my birth story, and it's not how I expected it to be. It's not how I would have planned it to be. It is what it is, though, and I'm so thankful that we didn't have a C-section. I'm so thankful that both of us are healthy, and honestly, that's the only thing that I could ever ask for. And I truly, thank God that, we're both here, and we're both perfectly fine, and that I was able to be given, I was given this wonderful gift, and our whole family was given this gift, and it's just been such a miracle and a blessing. And I'm just going to go ahead and show him to you again really quick, and he's in his little bouncy seat. I'm going to pick him up so you can see him, and I will come back with an update. I have kind of a lot of videos now that I want to talk about my first week. So far, I want to definitely talk about kind of the emotions I've been going through, and how everything has just totally changed in our life. But let me show you my sweet baby here. Okay, so this is him. This is our little Amir. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm trying to show you him, but he just is kind of... That's him. This is Amir. And our little son, our little bundle of joy. We could not be happier with him. So thank you so much for watching all of my pregnancy vlogs, and for watching these long labor and delivery stories, and I will definitely plan on making more videos when I can, and as I'm sure many of you know, it's hard to get things done when you have a newborn baby, but I'm determined to definitely still record videos and keep going with our daily lives and taking care of this sweet little one. So thank you so much for watching.